Well, good morning, councillors. Good morning, our members of the community in the gallery, and good morning to everyone viewing on live stream for our special meeting this morning. Just go through the obligatory introductions first, and I'd like to acknowledge. Not sure what that is. Am I too close?
Icon. Yes. So ask Councillor Friend to mute her end. Councillor Friend, can you mute your end?
All right. And nothing from the Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee. Whose isn't? We just get her to ring in. We'll give her a phone call. Yeah.
Sorry.
Good morning.
Councillor Friend, it's Amanda. I've just got you on the conference phone on the desk and you're on speaker.
Lovely, thank you so much. Good morning.
Can you mute yourself on Teams, please? Or disconnect from Teams? Good. There we go.
Okay, can you hear us, Councillor Friend? Beautiful. All right. There she is. All right, so just to clarify the proceedings today, ladies and gentlemen in the gallery, thank you so much for your courtesy and respect this morning for everybody coming in and out of the meeting, of the premises, I beg your pardon. Today, Council will be discussing this particular notice of motion. Our meeting protocol basically dictates that you will not be able to participate unless you are asked to by the chair, and that's me. So ultimately, if we want to refer to you for further updates or advice, we'll certainly do that, but unless you're invited to do so by the chair, then we ask you to respect the protocol of the meeting and remain silent. Thank you. All right, councillors, we've got a notice of motion in front of us. I'm going to go to a mover and a seconder, so we just go straight into debate on this one. I don't think there's any need for questions. I think everyone's read it overnight, unless there are questions. Councillor Mather?
Mr Mayor, yes, I have read it. I do endorse it. What I would ask, if the table would consider a previous notice that had been submitted, there are a number of dot points there, and although that's not the focus of today's motion, I'm just wondering whether the table would adopt three of those dot points.
Well, it might have been handy if we could have had that a bit earlier, councillors.
Well, I did give it to you, Mr Mayor, and I've got a copy here for everybody.
Yeah, well, I wasn't aware you were going. Well, my understanding yesterday was that we were going to put that one aside and go with this one, but ultimately I must have been confused. All right. So what did you want? What did you want to introduce, Councillor Mather?
Well, just three of the dot points.
Councillor, I'm not going to entertain those, I'm sorry. I'm just going to go with this one for the time being. Because I think that covers, you might disagree, Councillor, but I think that one, this particular motion covers what you're suggesting.
I was just going by the legal opinion, Mr Mayor.
Yeah. All right, so councillors, before you is the notice of motion.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I did have two questions. So the first one was, so we're at the end of section A in the first part of the motion. So is the intention that the statements below it, so B, C, D and E, are a reflection of the content of
Correct.
the meeting? Yep, okay.
Correct. Yep.
So that's fine. And the second part was, are we able to split part 1 and part 2 of the motion into separate votes?
I don't have a problem with that, Councillor. In a separate motions, yeah.
Can I just get it clarified what the councillor was talking about in A?
Councillor Hutton was seeking clarification that under point 1, B, C, D and E reflect the view of the meeting from Monday night and also seeking the table's approval to separate point 2 into a separate resolution.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, councillors? All right. So essentially, councillors, what the motion reflects, and we'll go to a mover and a seconder so we can get debate started. Thank you. So, oh yeah, I'm happy to move that. Councillor Eastwood, you're seconding? Okay. Sorry, just for point 1 at this stage, correct. All right, so in moving this, councillors, what the notice of motion is basically addressing is the concerns raised by the community at a meeting held on Monday evening last. We had, as we were all there apart from Councillor Hutton, who was attending the Cap Enterprise board meeting at the time, we were all there and ultimately witnessed several hundred people there expressing concern at the latest round of restrictions to be imposed post December 17 by the state government. I think it's a fairly clear indication, councillors, that with that number of people being vocal and expressing their concerns, there is an issue. And that's what this particular notice of motion seeks to emphasise to the Premier. Now, the Premier has actually asked for feedback in terms of these restrictions that will be introduced post December 17. That's what this is doing. And I think we have an obligation as a council to let her know what the feeling of this community is. And the community's feeling is very strong. As I've said in the motion there, that it is unreserved and strong. And I think that point needs to be made to the Premier because the view of our community is well made to us. We're also, I think, obligated to explain to her those concerns. So that's point B, C, D and E as I can best recollect. I think they are the main points raised from the meeting, and they are that vaccinations should be an individual's choice and employers should not be forced to exclude valued employees from the workplace for exercising that choice. C, these restrictions will hinder Queensland's economic recovery by not allowing full participation following the reopening of the borders. D, the restrictions will also hinder business to the point of closure in some instances, operating at full potential as regional Queensland's pool of employee candidates will be reduced by the new restrictions. And E, local businesses remain unsure about their obligations and liabilities for employees under workplace health and safety legislation. Very key and fundamental concerns. Now, I noted overnight, councillors, and I sent you the email, the Capricornia Chamber of Commerce has come out in support of our businesses locally and expressed similar concerns and will express similar concerns to the state government. So I'm just going to perhaps move the motion to put standing orders aside, just to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to comment on this. So I'll move that motion. Can I get a show of hands? Thank you. All in favour?
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Friend. Just suspending standing orders for the time being. Nigel, you're right.
Yeah, I just thought we were debating the motion.
Yeah, well, we are, but I just want to have it, have everyone basically have the flexibility to say. Mr. CEO.
It's a procedural motion, Mr Mayor. I'm not aware of any inhibition on the proposer not being able to suspend standing orders.
Thank you.
You are the chair.
Thank you. All right. So we've moved that, resolved it. So opening the floor to comments, councillors. Councillor Mather.
We're not debating at the moment.
No.
I feel that, as you say, the public has spoken, or a portion of the public has spoken, and vocally. And this isn't about the quality of the vaccine. This is about choice. This is about our rights. And we've got legal opinions to say what we're doing is correct, ethically correct, legally correct as far as that goes. And that was always a concern for this table, because the OIA comes and taps you on the shoulder and says, please explain. This is happening too much, certainly to me. But I'd just like to say that I endorse any action that objects to the loss of our freedom. Freedom of anything that we now have under our Constitution. And I feel that if we don't support the people who fight for that freedom, we are not doing our job. And Mr Mayor, I think that's all I need to say at this time, and we're not in debate yet. But that's why we're here. It's not about the quality of the vaccine. It's about being forced to do something against your will that is not in line with the intent of the Constitution.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Mather. Councillor Eastwood, you're...
Mr Mayor, all I was going to say, Mr Mayor, is I really don't see the point of just discussing this off the record when we should go straight into debate, which is...
Well, is everyone happy to do that? I was just giving everyone the opportunity to have their say if they wanted to do that. All right, so we'll resume standing orders. You all in favour? Okay.
Aye.
Thank you. All right. So, councillors, you've got point 1 in front of you. Is anyone speaking against?
The only question I would ask, Mr Mayor, to add to that, should we notify the member for Keppel at the same time? Add that to the motion.
I've given the member for Keppel an undertaking that I will send her a copy of the resolution once it's decided, councillors, one way or another. Yep. Anyone speaking for the resolution?
Just very quickly, I just want to say it was a pleasure to attend the meeting. It was a privilege to see the community rallying behind this cause, and to those that have organised it, it's a credit to you. Just let you know that next meeting we'll be talking about barking dogs and potholes, so you're more than welcome to attend. Thank you very much.
Okay. Anyone speaking against? Anyone else like to speak for? Councillor Eastwood.
I'll be happy to speak for, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Friend, I'll come to you in a moment.
Thank you very much for joining us today, guys, and for those outside, and also for those that are on the live stream. Mr Mayor, I've been a councillor now for 4 years, and I don't think there's been anything that's come across our table that has been so, or such a crucial decision that we have to make and debate. I can't even remember turning up and having sort of anyone standing outside, let alone possibly 100 or more. So, well, at least 100 or more. So it's very important our community are really thinking about this, and so we need to think about it, and I'm sure that we all have. And I'd sincerely like to thank our staunch business community for their strength and resolve amidst much fear and anxiety during this pandemic, and particularly in relation to the to the future post 17th of December. Thank you for your emails and messages. I tried to respond personally to all of them, but they just kept coming, and I just had to give up. However, I've listened intently to what each of you have had to say, and sincerely hope that today we can not only stand in solidarity with you, but that a vote today would send a strong message to the Premier so that she would reverse her decision to introduce restrictions for the unvaccinated from the 17th of December. Just on that point, not one constituent in Livingstone has ever approached me personally or electronically and said that this is great. The vaccinations, I mean, and the actual forced mandates. We are kept being safe, or any words to that effect, due to the restrictions. Yesterday I received an email, and in that email it said, quote, "Once upon a time, like in the fairy tale, Australia was the land of the free. What we once had is disappearing fast." Free. What a great word. It doesn't mean anything or anywhere near as much, though, until you're in fear of losing it. Last week on Remembrance Day, I attended the cenotaph in Yeppoon, and along with many others, remembered those who had given all they could give for the freedom that we enjoy today. The freedom to choose and the freedom of speech. In my lifetime, Mr Mayor and councillors, I haven't known a time of such uncertainty as we look to the future. We look to our leaders to lead and to guide us, and sometimes they mightn't get it quite right. And this time, in my opinion, they did not. This morning, councillors will be voting on what is essentially a pro-choice stance that indicates a couple of things. Firstly, it says to the Premier of our democratic government that vaccination should be an individual's choice, they shouldn't be coerced, and should never be mandatory. The rhetoric might say, but it's not mandatory. But logic and truth says, yes it is. Having consequences for choosing not to be vaccinated is penalising unvaccinated people. It is penalising vaccinated and unvaccinated business owners who either haven't got vaccinated staff and can't employ their unvaccinated staff, who, by the way, are also penalised because they can't work. It penalises unvaccinated patrons who are unable to attend due to mandate. They're unable to go to work. Why not just get the vaccine then? Wow, if it was only that simple, everyone would be vaccinated. Problem is, for whatever reason, and each day I hear more and more, people are hesitant to get the vaccine, whether from fear, distrust, physical or mental health reasons, or whatever. Many are simply worried about the safety of the vaccines and their effectiveness, and would rather wait for a protein-based traditional vaccine or take a punt with COVID and their good health status. These are often people that generally look after their health and have made a conscious decision due to that to take a vaccine do not take a vaccine that they haven't yet been convinced is good for them. For them, they've made a good health choice. More importantly, Mr Mayor, their choice. Secondly, our businesses have struggled. Many only just got through initial lockdowns, with some closing forever. Others are just coming good and now being forced or faced with the fear of the unknown, as well as the heavy-handed policing of unvaccinated patrons who in a small town are often known to the business owner. Talk about segregation where it should never occur, vaccine passports and a policy that will cause division amongst fellow Queenslanders. More than one business has told me they'll close down. They just can't do it again, Mr Mayor, and they don't want to. Others would just shut their doors but can't due to leases and financial commitments. And I know of a business owner getting the jab today, and he's actually in this room, who doesn't want to, but it's pretty much the last opportunity for him, and if he doesn't, his iconic Yeppoon business may be forced to close. The build-up of a lifetime's work, Mr Mayor. To him and his partner, it is mandatory. He believes he has no choice, and in the government's proposal, they have worked by forcing his hand. Our business owners are in turmoil, hence Monday night's huge crowd at the town hall, the loudest crowd I've ever seen there, and the huge crowd out there this morning, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, councillors, now is the time to be bold and to say in no uncertain terms to the Premier and her government that we are not happy, that our constituents aren't happy, and we wish her to reverse the decision in relation to unvaccinated people from the 17th of December. Members, I hope you are with me and the businesses of Livingstone and vote in the affirmative. Let's keep our society an egalitarian society, Mr Mayor, and I hope that you can all vote in the affirmative.
Thank you, Councillor Eastwood. Councillor Friend, I'll go to you now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Mr Mayor. We as a council have heard loudly from our Livingstone business community and all of those businesses from our neighbouring local government area also. We've heard the word pro-choice, pro-choice, pro-choice. Not only have we heard, we've listened intensely, as Councillor Eastwood has just stated. We did not ask for COVID-19 to enter our Australian shores, and up to this point we appreciated the efforts of all government to protect us from the pandemic. However, I understand that our business owners do not feel that they have the right to force their staff to obtain the vaccination, as this had, up until the 17th of December, been a voluntary uptake. For all other community members who do not work or have employment, this continues to be a voluntary decision. We did not vote for our local business owners to perhaps be subjected to liability if an employee catches COVID. We did not vote to have our freedom of choice compromised. I stand with the business owners who create personal connections and care for their employees, some like family. These business owners feel that they cannot enforce mandatory vaccinations on their employees because they grew up in Australia, a country of free will, democracy, opportunity and hope. Free will means the ability to have a choice. It means respecting those people with opposing views. Why? Because they have a choice. What the people of Livingstone did vote for is their elected members, all members, local, state and federal. They voted for us to be their voice because they are just too busy running their businesses, raising families whilst keeping our local economy alive and flourishing. They voted for us, for me. They laid their bets and hoped for winners. I'm not anti-vax, I am pro-choice, and I vote for our Mayor's fearless notice of motion. Today I stand with a majority of voices within my community who voted for me to be their voice. To the business owners, I say to you, you have been heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Friend. Councillor Watson, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Before being a councillor, I ran a small newspaper group on my own, and COVID almost stopped me at that time, and I believe this mandate would have closed me. But yesterday, I was advised that our Food Relief Capricorn Coast charity that we run, and I'm the president of, we're told we can no longer collect food for the back docks of these food places that we collect from because I don't have vaccinated volunteers. We can go in the front door and buy the food, but we can't pick up from the back door. We are a self-sustaining charity. We do not have any government funding, and the reason we opened this was to help feed people. This is going to be very difficult for us. I was also told this morning that my son spent a day in hospital because of the jab. He's okay. Sorry, I'm not an anti-vaxxer and I am pro-choice, and this is why I will follow our vote tonight. I will vote for this. But this is why we have to stand up.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Hutton.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our community looks for our local council to be their advocate. And on this matter, we've heard from our community again and again how we see a burden being placed on small business to enforce a set of regulations that not only hinders themselves but also hinders their capacity to earn their living. And at the end of the day, what we see, just as we've seen many times in local government, we see the shifting of responsibilities from a state government to local government. We're seeing it today from a state government to local business. And it's not something that business is placed to deal with. It's not something that business is ever prepared to manage. And therefore, it's up to us as councillors to be that advocate and say, hey, with whatever your best of intentions are, with whatever your health advice that guides you in your decision making, that the consequences of the choice that you're asking for these businesses to make today is such that you're putting them in an impossible situation. You're putting them in a situation where they're no longer their employer's, their employee's employer. You're now all of a sudden your employee's keeper. You're determining whether they'll get paid next week or not. Not because of their capacity to do their job or the contribution that they make, but because of something that we've been told throughout the last 2 years is a voluntary process. Now, I'm fully vaccinated. I chose to, some 6 months ago, go get vaccinated because I was concerned about the impact of when borders eventually would open up. But that's a choice that I made because I went knowing that how far and wide I travel in the community. I went, I couldn't in my own conscience go back to being in isolation the way that we had been some 12 months ago. I went, I wouldn't be able to sustain that, physically or mentally, to be honest. However, what we see here is a request from our business community to say that these things are beyond their capacity to manage, and if the government wishes to have these mandatory expectations, that they need to be the ones that are enforced. They can't place on business something that they can't do themselves. And at the end of the day, that's why I'm more than happy to support this. We are in a precarious situation. We have a situation where under the Workplace Health and Safety Act, every business is now at risk of being caught both ways. So we're under the situation where every business in Queensland, if we allow the COVID virus to enter our workplace and someone passes away from it, we can be deemed to have been liable for not having provided a safe work environment and not having removed that a known threat. But we also have the exact consequence that should we mandatory force someone to go get vaccinated and they get sick and pass away, that we're also liable because we've forced that upon our employee. So we've put a business where they can't win no matter what. By raising these issues with the Premier, by saying, hey, these are some of the consequences, what we can hope for is for a review and hope that some common sense can prevail so that our community is both safe but also our business community is not burdened.
Thank you, Councillor Hutton. Councillor Mather?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are just a number of little points, and I endorse all of the comments made that are very relevant, very factual. My good councillor friend here might have been here 4 years, and he said he's never seen such a time of uncertainty. He hasn't been here long enough. I can't remember a time when there's been certainty, and this is no different. You have to wade through the information, see what you can do, see why you're doing it, and take the necessary steps, and this is no different to any other one. I'd just like to read just a little quotation or part of an email that I received last night from one of that person may be in the room, I won't name them and embarrass them, but I thought it was excellent writing. Good leaders advocate to protect the rights of their people to be free to make a personal decision about COVID-19 vaccination. That will not see them discriminated against or segregated for declining this or any vaccination, and making sure they are free from punishment if they choose to do so. That's really what it is. It's punishment, it's isolation, it's segregation. No free country should enforce that on people. I have another little document here that it's not probably running around the streets. It's something that's given to doctors about exemption. Vaccinations may reasonably be temporarily deferred for individuals with some acute major medical conditions like undergoing major surgery or hospital admission for a serious illness. Now, the serious illness only deals with the heart. Pericarditis, myocarditis, endocarditis. But they go on to say that they have an exemption, temporary exemption, but once they've had the treatment and their heart's back in normal, they're expected to get the vaccine. And it goes on, and just another little bit. Pregnancy is not a valid reason for exemption if the absence of any criteria listed above. So even pregnant women will be forced, according to the guidelines set down by the state. Now, that is not managing the people in a very respectful and honest way. When you tell your pregnant mothers you're going to do this, there's a lot of women out there who are fearful, and any woman in this room would know exactly what I'm saying. The people who have taken a stand feel that they're helpless. They've been abandoned by their state, certainly because they've been forced into this situation. They feel helpless, and they're looking towards their leaders, the ones I just spoke about, to assist them. And we're going to do that today, Mr. Mayor, because everybody has given an attention to support your motion. And it's a good motion, and I thank you for that. And I'll say it once more time. People will remember the fluoride debate. You shall drink fluoride in your water. And of course, it sparked lots of problems across Queensland. And I was part of a team that was heading to get rid of the legislation that forced mandatory consumption of medication. It was a medication. This is a medication because it's a preventable, it's a prophylactic measure to stop disease. That's exactly what fluoride did. And there were lots of complications with that because I had evidence worldwide. This is no different. It's being forced to take a medication against your will. And the Premier and the government and the opposition need to take heed of what they're doing to good people, good citizens, lawful citizens who are trying to do the right thing, trying to prop up the economy. But they're being helpless, they're being held back, they're being hobbled. And they're saying, we don't care about that, this is what we want. Well, that's not on as far as I'm concerned. We have spoken and we will continue to make noises until such time as they do listen. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mather. Councillor Bello.
I guess given that the next motion perhaps for me is the most critical one, and not to diminish this one by any means, but I'll leave my comments other than to support my colleagues, what they've said. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Till that time.
Thank you, Councillor Bello. Well, I'll wrap up on this one, councillors. I had a fairly robust conversation with a member of our community yesterday afternoon in relation to this motion. I was told that I and we weren't showing leadership in promulgating this argument. We should be extolling the virtues of the COVID-19 vaccination, and that we ultimately should be preaching that message to our community. Well, holy dooly. If that's a definition of leadership, then I subscribe to a completely different definition, and I won't be taking lessons on leadership from that particular individual. The issue here, ladies and gentlemen, is we're elected to represent our community. Our community has given us a very strong and unequivocal message. This is what they are asking us to do. And it is exactly what the Premier has asked us to do. So I can't see what the problem is, quite frankly. So I just commend this to the table, councillors, and ask for your support. And on that, we'll wrap up debate and go to the vote. Thank you. So you've got a mover and myself, a seconder, and Councillor Eastwood, all in favour. Councillor Friend, thank you. Carried unanimously. All right. Resolution 2. is that Council respectfully requests that the Premier takes the concerns of the business community into account and reconsiders the decision to introduce restrictions for unvaccinated people from 17 December 2021. Okay, thank you, Councillor. So debate is live, councillors. I will reserve the right to wrap up, but I'll invite comments from the floor. Thank you. I'm moving it. Councillor Mather's seconding. Yep. So debate is live, councillors. Inviting comment.
Mr Mayor, there's no sense in us saying all of the above until we send that message through. Until we send that message through to the Premier and clearly. And I understand we're not the only ones taking the stand today. And I'd say that they can't ignore it when the population stands up against its state.
All right. Councillor Mather's in favour. Anyone speaking against? Would anyone else like to speak for? Councillor Bello.
We've got a comment, and probably the only, Mr Chair, is just in the wording there. I guess without asking the audience directly for an answer, but I sense that perhaps they would like to see something stronger in there. And so I feel the need to at least put some more teeth into it, and probably request an amendment to it. Council respectfully requests the Premier takes the concerns of the business community into account, in something to reflect their pro-choice sentiments. That is ultimately what that's ultimately the message that has been made clear to us. And reconsider maybe / reverse the decision. So that's the amendments that I'd like the members to consider. I don't think it changes it too much, but I'd appreciate anybody's feedback.
All right.
Through the chair, if I may.
Councillor Friend.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Perhaps it would be something like, and my suggestion would be Council respectfully requests that the Premier acknowledges the concerns of the business community and rescinds the decision to introduce restrictions for unvaccinated people. That is the suggestion. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Friend. Councillor Mather.
Mr Mayor, would the Councillor Friend be willing to propose that as an amended motion?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Mather, and through the chair. Most certainly, if my fellow councillors feel that is strong enough wording.
All right. Well, what we'll do, councillors, is we'll deal with the motion before us at the moment, and then we'll also have some amended motions ready to go as well.
Mr Mayor, if the motion has been amended.
Yeah, well, we'll have an amended motion from Councillor Bello first. We'll deal with that one. Well, Councillor Bello, you're proposing an amendment.
Oh, well, I am proposing an amendment that I guess encapsulates almost the collective of the table, and I wish I could provide clearer words, but something to the effect that even with what Councillor Friend has suggested, the Premier help me out. Acknowledges the concerns of the business community.
All right, so can we put that as an amendment?
Acknowledges the community and
the word was rescind. Rescind the decision to introduce restrictions for unvaccinated people from the 17th of December 2021. I feel that's respectful yet strong enough wording.
Yep.
Well, councillors, I guess I'm feeling a little bit uneasy about doing things on the fly here. What I'd rather do is deal with this resolution. If it fails, then ultimately we can put an alternate motion before the table.
Yep, thank you, Mr Chair. Perhaps reconsiders the decision. Sorry? That's the original one.
That's the original one.
Where have we got the other one, please?
Through the chair, would you mind reading the alternative out as I can't see it from where I'm sitting?
It reads as follows, that council respect, this is yours, councillor friend. Is that the one you're after?
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
So that council respectfully requests that the Premier acknowledges the concerns of the business community and rescinds the decision to introduce restrictions for unvaccinated people from 17 December 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. So, councillors, I'm going to go to the vote on the original motion. And if that fails, we can deal with the second one.
Could you read that one out, please, Mr. Mayor?
That's up there.
This is there, councillor Mayor.
Yeah, no, for the sake of the people who can't see it.
The original motion is that council respectfully requests that the Premier takes the concerns of the business community into account and reconsiders the decision to introduce restrictions for unvaccinated people from 17 December 2021. All right. So, councillor Mather, you've seconded that. Are you still happy to second it?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
All right. So, debate is live. So, do you have any further discussion on this, councillors, or are you happy to go to the vote? Okay, councillor Hutton.
Yes, councillors, I'm happy to speak on this one, recognising that I think words do matter, but also does a reflection of both our knowledge and our capacity and our contribution that we can make. As a society and as a community and as a nation, I think in the last 12 months and beyond that to the last 18, we have felt a loss of empowerment, that quite often the decisions have been made at us with no real opportunity to question why, or more importantly to say, hey, is that okay? And at some level it was about making us feel safe and about protecting us from things that were completely outside our control. And there was a necessity for speed, a necessity for immediacy that limits democracy. We all know that the ancient Athenians, etc., never took democracy in place when it came to war. They always picked a tyrant to rule over them. Yet, we're now 18 months down the track. We have better information, we've had more opportunity, and yet it feels like from time to time when these decisions are coming out, they're no longer, or they continue to not seek feedback or seek collaboration to go, okay, well, how do we best do this to achieve the outcome we're looking for our community, or even necessarily provide the justification as to why this choice is being made for this item today, but instead just say, well, hey, we're doing this and we're doing this for your best interest. 18 months ago, we all willingly accepted those things as a consequence of keeping us safe, but I feel individually and collectively that we are better informed now, and the idea that we ask them to reconsider recognises that we don't know the sum of all parts. We don't know what the medical advice is or what the charts that they're looking about to say, well, when they open the borders, what the effect's going to be. We recognise that they will have more information than us, but because the door has been opened for us to provide feedback, because the opportunity is here for us to say, hey, the ideas that you're putting forward are not necessarily going to be good, because it's not that they came in the day that they announced them. Instead, they gave us a month's notice so that we could provide this opportunity. I think this motion, as is provided, put forward by the Mayor, gives us that opportunity to say, hey, circumstances have changed. Society's expectation is that we do want to have a voice and have a say in these things moving forward. And we ask that you reconsider this, acknowledging that we, as individuals, don't have the sum of all parts that hopefully they're using in making their decision. But they also, by missing the opportunity to have collaboration, corroboration, and asking for feedback from the business community, from the community itself, have missed that opportunity. So this gives them a chance to reconnect and touch and go, yep, this is a new stage for us in terms of our COVID survival in a post-COVID world.
Thank you, councillor Hutton. Any other comments, councillors, before I wrap up on this one? Councillor Eastwood?
I'd like to speak against the motion, Mr Mayor. I think there's a better motion out there, and I think that we are falling short if we don't have the courage and the guts to go forward with a stronger motion which sends a very direct message to our state government. And I implore this council to have the courage to stand up for what we all know is right and true. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I kind of take a little bit of offence to that. It's if to say we're not standing up for our people. I don't know that you meant it that way, but I think it's a bit of an indication that there is no confidence in us
Microphone, councillor.
representing our people, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Mr Mayor, if
I
I've
don't think
offended
you
the
meant to
councillor,
offend.
I'll withdraw that comment.
I'm sure he didn't mean to offend, but it sounded that way.
All right. Thank you, councillors. Councillors, in wrapping up on this, sorry, you were okay? I think you're it, councillor.
Chair, I do feel the need to probably, well, not probably, but support Councillor Easton, although I think this is a huge step forward in itself, but I believe that we have a wonderful opportunity to really draw a line in the sand and make it clear that we actually reflect the attitudes of our business community here, our small business community especially. And I will say that I have no authority to tell anybody what medical assistance or what medical advice they should take at all. I'm a tiler by trade, a bricklayer, so you wouldn't listen to me on that. And I would hope that you'd get the best medical advice you could. You would get a second opinion, a third opinion, a fourth opinion if need be, and place your trust in the medical practitioners that Australia is leading the world in. The only authority I have here is to try and influence this council to send a message to the state government that we are seriously concerned about the direction that these restrictions are framed in. You've all commented on various elements of it, whether it be discrimination or how does an employer, vet their employees. Talked about freedoms and all that sort of stuff. The only comment I would make that unrestrained freedom can lead to anarchy. So I'm not one to sort of advocate that freedom comes without boundaries. It actually does have boundaries. In some ways, free countries have more boundaries, and that's what makes them function so well. So I respect the boundaries that we do have in place within our constitution. It's for good reason. But in trying to support our pro-choice business community, I would hope that we can just make some slight amendments in the next motion, and believe that it would be a more positive step. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Watson, did you want to make any comment on this one? All right. So in wrapping up, councillors, the wording here was written deliberately. I probably wrote this thing about 10 times in consultation with the CEO yesterday. It's framed in a way. Look, the Premier is an intelligent woman, and she will figure out, I would hope, from reading this and reading the previous motion, the strength of conviction of our business community around this, and also the fact that we have convened a meeting, an urgent meeting, well outside the normal parameters of our meeting process, that she would understand the urgency and the importance of this and the degree of passion and angst behind it. And so I think the word reconsider there is appropriate, but obviously if this gets voted down, I'm more than happy to sort of consider any other alternatives. So on that, councillors, there's a move from myself, second from Councillor Mather. We'll go to the vote on this one. All in favour? Noting Councillor Hutton, Councillor Watson, Councillor Mather and myself. Those against? Yeah, Councillor Friend's against, I think. Councillor Friend?
Yes.
Yep. So the motion is carried. All right. So thank you, councillors. Thank you, members of the community in the gallery present. Thanks for those who are viewing in on live stream. As this is the only matter on our agenda today, the meeting is concluded. Thank you for your attendance.
Mr. Mayor, when you receive communication back from the Premier's Department, how do you expect to disseminate that information to the public?
Pardon me, if I get a response from the the Premier with her approval. I'll be able to circulate it to the community. I aren't necessarily able to do that without her approval.
Unless it's on Channel 7 News tonight.
Yeah.